Welcome to the regularly scheduled meeting of the Community Development and Regulatory Services Committee for today, November 10th. We've been joined by council members Cano, Quincy, Fry, and Reich, which is a quorum of our committee this morning. We are going to begin with the consent agenda. There are a couple of housekeeping items. I'm first going to move to postpone item 5 for 2 cycles, scheduling it for the first Community Development and Regulatory Services Committee meeting in 2016. Are there any questions on that motion? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That item is approved. On item number 7, item number 7 is the 2015 levy for special assessments and the adoption of the assessment rolls. Is there anyone here to speak to this issue today? There is someone here. Okay. This was not noticed on our agenda as a public hearing, but we are going to invite you to speak. So we're going to take that item up first so you don't need to wait. So is there a staff report on item number 7? Sorry, apparently this potentially could have been a public hearing, but it wasn't noticed that way.
There isn't an official staff report, no, but the RCA includes all of the information about what the expectations are in the request to pass this to the county as a 2015 levy.
Okay, so you might need to talk to the young man that's here today after he speaks to us, would be my guess.
We would be happy to meet Chair Goodman with anyone who is here to speak on the issue.
Okay, thank you very much. Given this is not a public hearing, I won't open the public hearing, but I'll invite anyone who's here who would like to speak on item number 7 to please step forward and state your name and address for the record, and feel free to give your comments at this time.
I apologize that I taking the time from the city council meeting. I had a health condition that I couldn't follow the steps that prescribed here directly, and that's why I'm here. I apologize. I had my appendicitis and other things.
Maybe you could just tell us your name and address for the record.
So it's Moshe Vorotinov. Should I spell my name? It's
sure.
M-O-S-H-E. Last name Vorotinov, V-O-R-O-T-I-N-O-V. I'm a co-owner of 1921 Queen Avenue North. It's a property that's been sold at the public auction. And there was a necessity to sign a code of compliance and restoration agreement that we're trying to sign. At the point that we are ready and prepared all the papers and supplied to the city, we were advised by one of the inspectors to look closer what we signed for. And since this communication started, we still were within this timeline that were allowed us to sign restoration agreement and pay $2,000 fee versus being charged $6,900 something, almost $7,000 of vacant building registration fee.
Okay.
And we were under impression that we still given this leeway, but apparently from latest communication that we received from the city inspectors, they had a different understanding. And right now we're facing this additional almost $7,000 charge, vacant building registration. So I'm asking permission either to waive it or reconsider the case here and give us ability to finish this restoration that needs to be done to the property, which will improve property in North Minneapolis. And I have a track record of being able to maintain property, buy property from whatever distressed, very bad neighborhood and bring it up, rent it, and provide safe environment, whatever is needed for whatever city development situation.
Okay, well, thank you very much for being here today. It sounds like our staff is happy to meet with you. They're sitting directly behind you.
Thank you very much.
And I'm hopeful that they will be able to reach some sort of conclusion with you that they can then report back to us via email so we can take this item forward in a week and a half. And thank you very much for being here today. Is there anyone else here who would like to speak to item number 7? Anyone? Okay, then what I'm going to do is move the consent agenda, which is items 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8, as well as the and 9, as well as the receive and file item, which is item number 10. So I'm moving items 3 through 10 for approval. Are there any items on that list anyone would like to discuss, other than the one that's postponed already? Seeing none, receive and file means no report. Would you like a report? Okay. Mr. Lutz, do you have anything you'd like to report on?
Madam Chair, no, the soccer working group report just speaks for itself. The group had 2 meetings.
Okay. So this is the consent agenda, all items except for item 5 that's already been postponed. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Those items are approved. We'll move on to our public hearing agenda, starting with item number 1. Mr. Wilson.
Madam Chair, we have an application today by the Community Keg House LLC for an on-sale wine and strong beer license Class E at 34 13th Avenue Northeast. This is in the Grain Belt Brewing Complex. Off-street parking requirements have been met. There is a interior seating capacity here of 86 persons. They will not have an exterior area, such as a patio or sidewalk cafe. They intend to be open from 4 p.m. to midnight during the week and 2 p.m. to midnight on Saturday, 2 p.m. to 10 p.m. on Sundays. Principal owner is Nathaniel Field. He is an 85% shareholder owner and will be the on-site manager. This business is to be operated as a restaurant, and it was built to serve as a meeting place for our craft beer community. The restaurant will serve a variety of panini sandwiches, nachos, salads, vegetarian and meat option plates. A public hearing is required for this application. We did mail 13 public hearing notices to property owners and residents within 600 feet of the establishment. We also notified the Sheridan Neighborhood Association and the Beltrami Neighborhood Council. We also posted the building wherein the business is to be located. As of today, we received no responses for or against the application. The site meets all of our requirements. The application meets all of our requirements, and the staff's recommendation is to approve.
Are there any questions for Mr. Wilson on item number 1? Seeing none, we'll open the public hearing on item number 1. If there's anyone here to speak to this issue, please step forward, state your name and address for the record.
My name is Josh Blanc. I am the owner of Clay Square to Infinity, and I am in the building of 34 13th Avenue Northeast, the Keg House Arts Building. I'm here also as a resident of Northeast for 20 years. I am an artist for 20 years in the district. Been the president of NEMA, which puts on Art World, and I'm the current director of the Northeast Minneapolis Arts District. My concern is that we've had now, this will be the 76th beer and alcohol establishment in Northeast. This is the 25th that I've noticed in the last 5 years that has come about. So what I'm trying to figure out is, what is the intent of the city council to keep on giving more liquor licenses out to art spaces and other sorts of venues? How do we, is this conscious, is this unconscious? How do we figure this out, that so many artists and city and local people are wondering what is going on and how this works? So I'm here to try to figure out that process and understand what we can do to work better with the community. I have nothing against the owners. They're nice people. They have every right to have their own business. But as the arts community, as a district that this body created, where do we go? How do we have a better dialogue of what kind of businesses come into this community? So that's what I'm here to try to figure out.
Okay, thank you for your testimony. Is there anyone else here to speak to this issue? Anyone? Anyone? Seeing none, I'm going to close the public hearing. Would one of the folks on the side want to speak to that? Or would you like to move approval? Would you like to speak to what would you like to do?
On this particular item, I will move approval.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Item number 1 has been moved for approval. Further comments or questions? Okay, seeing no further comments or questions, what I'll say to the young man who spoke to us earlier is, our job is to determine whether or not a liquor license is allowed or not allowed based on our the information in front of us. Does the money come from a clean source? Do they meet the zoning code requirements? Do they meet very specific requirements? We don't make judgments about whether or not a juice bar or a beer hall or a liquor license is the best use for any individual neighborhood. We look at whether or not the license is something that they're legally entitled to. And it seems like in this case, and in the case of the other 76 licenses in the Northeast area, they were entitled to those licenses. If there was an interest in talking about restricting that, that would have to come from the council members representing that area. So we're not really discussing land use or other issues in our committee. We're just very narrowly looking at whether or not their money comes from a place where that's clean and that they have a good history of operating and that they have the allowed zoning in the area, just to kind of answer your question, not leave it unanswered. So Councilmember Fry.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just to comment a bit further, that segment of the Northeast, and specifically 13th Avenue, has a really unique fabric to it that combines a number of different outlets, whether it's commercial, retail, art, and quite obviously liquor as well. I do think that, there is a tipping point, but that being said, that's really not the issue that we are confronting, nor are we legally able to confront it in the meeting at this time. But I would be happy to discuss it with you further. Please don't hesitate to give me a call. I'd love to hear from you.
On the motion to approve the staff recommendation, which is to issue a new business license for the Community Keg House at 34 13th Avenue Northeast, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? That item is approved. We'll move on to item number 2, which is a license upgrade. Mr. Wilson.
Madam Chair, we have an application by Lush Enterprises LLC. They do business as Lush. It's an on-sale liquor establishment that's operated for several years at 990 Central Avenue Northeast. They are seeking to upgrade their license from an on-sale liquor class B to on-sale liquor class A, and they are doing an internal expansion of premises, increasing the inside area to accommodate more live on-stage entertainment. This is located in the medium industrial zoning district, which is appropriate for this use. They have an adequate amount of off-street parking for this expansion, as is determined by the zoning administrator. They will have seating on the inside for 100 persons and 54 persons on the exterior private patio. Their hours of operation will remain the same, 4 p.m. to 2 a.m. Monday through Friday, and 10 a.m. to 2 a.m. Saturday and Sunday. Kenneth Darling is recently a new owner in the past year or so, and he is 100% owner and operator of this business. Public hearing is required for the upgrade. 120 public hearing notices were mailed to property owners and residents within 600 feet. We also notified the Marcy Homes Neighborhood Association. We received 2 responses from that notification process. Both of them are in support of the application. Our review finds that the application meets all of our requirements, and staff recommends approval.
Are there any questions for Mr. Wilson on item number 2? Seeing none, we'll open the public hearing on item number 2, which is a license upgrade at 990 Central Avenue Northeast. Is there anyone here to speak to this issue? Anyone? Anyone? Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing. Councilmember Fry.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would like to move approval of this item, and would briefly like to comment. I think this is a great expansion for that particular business that has been going through some rough times these last couple of years. Kelly Phillips, who was the former owner, was a good friend, was a wonderful business owner. He was heavily involved with Marcy Homes Neighborhood Association and was tragically killed. And I really appreciate the work that Ken Darling has done in getting this whole operation back and in business. So I do full-heartedly move that we approve this item.
On the motion to approve Councilmember Fry's motion, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? That item is approved. We'll then move on to our discussion agenda. I'll note that item number 14 is a referral to staff, so I'm going to move to refer item number 14 to staff. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? That item has been referred. I'm also then going to take up item 13. I'm sorry, Sherry. I'm looking at the number of people who are here, and I have 3 council members too. Oh, no. All right, Mom, do you mind? I just think we should take up the Lake Street issue first. We have a lot of legal, technical staff here. So perhaps if there's no objection, Is there any objection? Seeing none, we'll take up the issue of reopening Nicollet and Lake Street project at 30 West Lake Street. Mr. Frank, welcome.
Thank you. Madam Chair, committee members, and guests, good afternoon. As you know, the City of Minneapolis has a long-held vision for the Lake and Nicollet area, which includes reopening Nicollet Avenue across Lake Street and the Midtown Greenway, and redeveloping the property on both sides of the reopened Nicollet Avenue. There is strong policy support and support from the community for this effort, and this image from the 2005 Midtown Minneapolis plan shows one potential scenario, and you'll see that it does show a reopened Nicollet and some redevelopment. City staff has been working over the past few years to advance this effort, and that's just the most recent time. And I'd like to acknowledge Council Members Bender, Kano, Glidden, Goodman, Reich, Warsami, and their staffs, and the staff from CPED, Public Works, Finance, Communications, and the Mayor's Office who have been working on this project, and with a special thanks to Rebecca Perel for her work over the past few weeks. In April 2014, the City Council approved the Lake and Nicollet redevelopment plan, which designated the area as blighted and named both 30 West Lake Street and 10 West Lake Street as parcels the city may acquire. I'm going to move to my aerial photo exhibit. Good enough. The 30 West Lake Street parcel, which I will address first, is on the left in this aerial photo. It's also known sometimes as the grocery store site. It's 2.9 acres with a vacant 26,000 square foot retail building constructed in 1977 and most recently occupied by a SuperValue grocery store. The city has been in discussions with the owner of 30 West Lake Street regarding the purchase of this property for the past few years. There have been several interested buyers other than the City of Minneapolis during this time. In September of this year, the owner agreed to sell the property to the city for $5,275,000. The city will receive, subject to your approval, and that we close, the city will receive monthly rent of about $7,500 from SuperValue under the lease for the grocery store, and the tenant is responsible during the remaining term of the lease for maintaining the site. If acquired, the property would be sold in the future for higher density mixed-use redevelopment, consistent with the adopted land use plans. However, it will be necessary first to address the existing reciprocal easement and maintenance agreement, or REA, which precludes redevelopment of the parking area so long as either Kmart or SuperValue shall be used for one or more retail commercial establishments. And I should point out, staff has not yet had meaningful conversations with Kmart about the REA. This is a key property for acquisition to allow implementation of the larger vision for the area and achieving many of the Lake and Nicollet redevelopment plan's objectives. The CPED director signed a purchase agreement for the property with a closing date this December, subject to City Council approval, which is one of the things we are asking you for today. The 10 West Lake Street parcel on the right in the aerial photo, also known as the Kmart site, is 7.1 acres with an occupied 100,000 square foot retail building, also constructed in 1977 and currently in use as a Kmart store. The city has been in discussions with representatives of the Kadish ownership group, the controlling ownership interest of 10 West Lake Street, regarding the purchase of this property for the past few years. And as described in the staff report, the ownership of this property is very complex. The city and Kadish have discussed him providing the city or its assigns with a 1 to 2 year option to purchase the leased fee estate for $8 million. Staff is seeking a delegation of authority to the CPED director to negotiate the final terms of an option agreement consistent with the general terms in the staff report you have in front of you. If a final deal is reached with Kadish, staff is seeking a further delegation of authority to the CPED director to sign and implement the option agreement. Staff has negotiated an option due diligence period prior to payment of the option price. During this period, Kadish would provide the city with certain due diligence information, including the operating lease, to allow the city to obtain an allocation of the appraised value to the leased fee estate, conduct environmental and geotechnical investigations, review a title commitment, complete a land survey. At the end of the option due diligence period, based on the review and outcomes and findings of this work, the CPED director could terminate the option agreement or proceed to pay the $800,000 non-refundable option price. And I should say here very clearly, if the appraised value of the leasehold estate or other information is determined to be materially different from what we have outlined in the staff report Staff will report back to the City Council prior to the expiration of this option due diligence period. Among the reasons staff is recommending these steps today is to reduce the variables of site assembly and focus in earnest on our negotiations with Kmart. These negotiations could produce a variety of outcomes. First, if we can make a deal, if Sears Kmart is willing to sell its interest voluntarily, potentially as part of a redevelopment of the site, the city could acquire these lease interests and close under this option agreement on the leased fee estate, either with city financial resources or timed with the selection of a redevelopment team to pay the remaining acquisition price. This would leave either the city or a city-selected developer as the sole owner of the property, fully unencumbered. In this scenario, staff would return to the City Council for authorization to exercise the option agreement and purchase the property with city funds or with a development partner. However, and I should say this as clearly as I can, Sears Kmart has repeatedly said and consistently said they wish to remain as tenants on the site, and because of this, it may be the case that the city and Kmart are unable to reach agreement. Second, if the city and Kmart are unable to reach agreement, the city could still choose to exercise the option to purchase the leased fee estate from Kadish and hold it, becoming the ground lease landlord of Kmart. If Sears Kmart chooses to continue with business as usual and not negotiate a deal with the city, there may be no reasonable alternative but to wait until Sears Kmart chooses not to renew their lease or the lease expires, which is 2053. End of my real estate description. Staff is requesting an appropriation of up to $6,275,000 from the development account for the 30 West Lake Street purchase price and the 10 West Lake Street option price, as well as associated due diligence and closing costs from the available fund balance. And I should point out this is a temporary source until the City Council approves a modification to the common project, which would reimburse the development account. Quickly on next steps. After council approval, next steps for the grocery store site include closing on the property in December. And next steps for the Kmart site include continued negotiations on the Kmart option agreement, review of due diligence information, paying the $800,000 option payment if this information is acceptable, and continued discussions with key stakeholders, especially Kmart. Thank you. I appreciate your patience, and I'm available for questions.
Are there any questions for Mr. Frank? Councilmember Fry.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Frank, well, first off, thank you for what I know is a ton of work, and also my colleagues that I know were extensively involved. The $6 million for the West Lake Street, do you view that as a beneficial acquisition regardless of whether we get the street going all the way through in the near future? I mean, in other words, what we can do things with that regardless of the end result with the street?
Madam Chair and Councilmember Fry, it's $5,275,000 for the purchase of the grocery store site. So I'll answer that question.
Yep.
Yes, in a word, yes. This site is key to implementing our adopted policies. It's immediately adjacent to the site that is where Nicollet would go through, when hopefully we can make Nicollet go through. And as I mentioned in the staff report, and as I covered just here now, there is an agreement in place, a recorded agreement, saying that effectively someone can't build in either parking lot without the approval of the parties on the other side. One of the very first things we will try to do is to negotiate that away so that we have the ability to produce development at Lake and Blaisdell on the west corner of the site.
What agreement is that?
I'm just going to point for a second right there to that part of the parking lot. It's called an REA, and it's a recorded document against the property, which says, and I'm summarizing here, and I might have this a little wrong, but effectively that parties can't build on the parking lot in front of either building without the approval of the parties, both the landowner and the tenant on the other side.
On the adjacent property, meaning
Correct.
30 West Lake Street would have veto power over 10 West Lake Street and vice versa.
Correct.
Okay.
So the short answer is yes. I believe that there is value and that this is a smart thing to do. Our ability to have the kind of redevelopment that we want and that the community wants and our plans want depends on the ability to make this agreement go away, those requirements go away. And let me just say, if we can't, and subject to future city council decisions, we can sell it. I think that the value is there as an exit strategy.
Okay. And then regarding 10 West Lake Street, what we're authorizing today And I think I know the answer to it. I just want to say it out loud and to be really clear. What we're authorizing today is for us to sign the document that allows us to view the lease. And then subsequently, we can then make a decision as to whether to spend the $800,000 for the option.
Madam Chair, Councilmember Fry, that's right. If I could just say it back to you, if that's okay. So what we're asking for is your authorization to finish negotiating the option agreement. We're most of the way there. There are some terms that remain to be negotiated. And subject to finishing that in compliance with the terms we've outlined in the staff report, we're asking for your authorization for the CPED director to sign that agreement. So I'm agreeing with you. And then there'd be a due diligence period where, among other things, yes, we would review one lease we have not yet seen to make sure it fits with what we think we know. And subject to that, yes, to put up the $800,000 at that time.
So after our staff has had the opportunity to view the lease agreement and then they report back to, assumedly, CDRS, can we then vote on it again?
Madam Chair, Councilmember Fry, what we're asking you for here is if everything looks as in compliance with what we already have, that we would not report back, but that if there's something that's materially different and is not as we have described it here, that yes, we would be back. That's how it's written in the staff report today.
Okay. In my mind, it wouldn't be a question of material difference. It would just be a question of what information do we not presently have regarding the terms of the lease.
Madam Chair, Councilmember Fry, we're not sure,
right,
which is among the reasons that we're requiring and needing to see it, and will see it before putting up the money, the option payment.
Okay, thank you. I really appreciate it.
Are there any other questions for Mr. Frank? Seeing none, thank you for your report. I'll note that members of the committee have had a good amount of information on this item already. Many have served on a team, or their staff have served on a team that's been working on this for a long period of time. So a lack of questions does not reflect a lack of interest or knowledge about what's happening, just not the need to ask them out loud. I'll just see if Councilmember Bender or Councilmember Glidden have anything they want to say, since they've taken time out of their schedules to join us today.
Sure. Thank you, Madam Chair. I really appreciate the opportunity to be in the committee today and to be part of this important discussion. This is an important turning point in what has been one of the city's biggest mistakes, I think, in the past, which is literally building a wall across Nicollet Avenue. And I think from the information I've heard from our staff, it's probably our best chance as a city to correct this mistake. And there'll be a lot of details for us to consider in the future. But I wanted to take a moment just to kind of couch this in the bigger picture. We have negotiated agreements with 3 out of 4 private entities in this site, which is a very complicated real estate deal. And we have assembled 10 acres of land in what's an increasingly attractive part of the city, and that is a big deal. So again, we're at a really important turning point in this discussion. I think it's an important turning point, not just for the neighborhoods nearby that have long wanted their street reconnected, but for the city as a whole, because this is such an important part of our city. In this immediate intersection, there's about 15,000 people that live within walking distance and thousands more people who work nearby. Nicollet Avenue is a spine that runs from the very southern tip of our city through downtown, where we're investing along with partners. We've leveraged a lot of public investment to rebuild Nicollet Miles, a $50 million public investment there. We're planning for significant transit improvements in the future, including hopefully rail transit that connects across the river. But even today, this is one of the most important transit corridors in the state. There are 6 million annual transit trips on the 17 and 18 buses alone. And that doesn't even include the transit riders on Lake Street. And today, those transit riders have to go around this big wall. That's where the street should be. So as we plan for the future of our city, this is one corner, but it's an important corner. And I think this is our opportunity here to correct a mistake that we've inherited, and a time for us to be able to leave a legacy for the future of these neighborhoods and, again, for the city as a whole. So I really appreciate all of the care and consideration that I know the council members have taken, again, with this complicated set of decisions. This is one small step, but it's an important one. I think there's a lot of uncertainty left. There's a lot of uncertainty in these final negotiating moments, and we will all collectively have to review the details to make sure we're being good stewards of the city's dollars and making good investments. So I'm appreciative of all of the time and questions from my colleagues, and excited that we are at this important point. I also just wanted to mention that, this now in the 10th ward was previously in the 6th ward. So it was former council member Robert Lilligren who put together the working group that's been meeting now for 3 or 4 years, and really appreciative of his leadership in the past.
Councilmember Glidden.
Thanks, Madam Chair. I've been working in this area for a long time. Probably the top focus when I came into office about 10 years ago was on 35W Lake Street Transit Access Project, which I will just say we have made tremendous progress on as well. And that I think is integrally related to the fact that we're now at this important moment regarding the decades-long desire to reopen Nicollet. And I want to thank our staff for, I think, some skillful work in helping us get here. Again, the expectations of the community around this site are very, very high. It's probably, even when I talk to folks that I know outside of Minneapolis, it is one of the most recognizable sites in Minneapolis, for good or for bad. I guess what I feel is that we are frankly, getting to this moment was big, but frankly, what we're about to enter into is the most important part of this negotiation. And that is because the public purse is not unlimited. So this is a very important investment for the city. This is an opportunity that we're seeing in front of us right now. And frankly, that opportunity has not been before us before. But at the end of the day, we have to see how we're able to finalize these negotiations, because today, and I'm just going to repeat this, Kmart has a lease that goes to, with options, to 2053. And